Hey everyone, welcome to the World Podcast. I'm James Marshall, and before we get to today's episode, a quick mention to our partners who have helped bring this episode to you and kept the podcast going. Firstly, Todd's Racing, champion harness trainer, Regan Todd, who's a lad who just wanted to help out the podcast. So in return, let's help him out by following Todd's Racing on Facebook and Twitter. Also, the Waterlad Coffee Bean has impressed anyone who's given it a go. Freshly roasted in Nelson by Pomeroy's. If you enjoy your coffee, you will love this bean. To order, head over to waterlad.com, click the coffee link up the top, and you'll be away. Anyway, I have an amazing guest on for you today, so let's get to it.
What a lad, what a lad, what a lad, what an absolute lad. What a lad, what a lad, what a lad, what an absolute lad.
Okay, righto guys, I have a very special guest for you all today. Refereeing is such an interesting part of the game that we all love, so I'm stoked to have one of the best in the world on Waterlad today. He's refereed at all levels, including Super Rugby, the Six Nations, even the Rugby World Cup, and he's recently returned from the Lions Tour of Africa. And above all, like all my guests are, he is an absolute lad. He's one of the greats. It is, of course, the man himself, Ben O'Keeffe. Welcome, mate.
Cheers, Jeremy. Wow, what an introduction. It's awesome to be on What a Lad. So thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.
Hey, mate, awesome to have you on. Like I said, you're freshly back from this massive tour, Lions against South Africa. Looked like one of the most intense tours of all time. How was it to be out in the middle of all that?
Bro, it was pretty crazy. You speak of intensity. It was definitely up there. Probably one of the most intense, I guess, fixtures, but also series that I think has ever been in terms of Lions. Like I knew it was going to be pretty big. Every Lions series comes with their intensities, controversies, talking points, and certainly the one that I've just come out of offered plenty, but it sort of offered plenty right from the get go. So it was a pretty busy 3 weeks. It was up there in terms of one of those experiences that I'll remember. But yeah, man, it's good to be home. Really, good to be sort of back into a bit of safety.
Yeah, mate, for sure. And I watched that second test, the one where you're in the middle. I watched it with just the ref comms on, and man, I was blown away with how much you had to deal with throughout that game. You've got the TMO constantly in your ear. You've got your assistants. You've got players constantly talking to you. You're trying to calm everyone down because there's a fair bit of biffo going on. And it's just, and that's not even including the actual refereeing of the game where there's so much pressure on you to get that right. So, mate, is it as hard as it looked?
Oh, you forget, that was without having the crowd either. So we had one
true.
less, element involved there. So yeah, it was full on. And I think, listening to the ref comms, you do realise that actually there is a lot going on in the background. And it didn't help that game went on for 2 hours either. So I had 2 hours worth of players and coaches and TMO decisions. So it was full on, but it was just one of those games that it just needed what happened in that game. We just had to get amongst it, and every sort of hurdle that we had to get through, it started in the first 2 minutes, and then it just continued for the rest of the game. So I feel sorry for you having to listen through all that, but it kept me on my toes and my boys on their toes. Having to get through that game, and because every little thing that we're having to deal with, was something that I needed the other guys to be talking to me constantly, and I needed the TMO to be in my ear as well, because that's a game of rugby now. You can't really just be the one solely refereeing it in the middle. You actually need your guys on the sideline and the man up in the box to help you out, just to give you a feel for what's going on.
Yeah, mate, you must be really good at multitasking, because you're having this conversation with the TMO while still trying to referee the game. It's like trying to do two things at once that men supposed to aren't be able to do.
Yeah, mate, look, obviously, naturally being a male, you don't, I struggle at that, but it's just like anything, it's just practice. And certainly over the years, it's become more of a, and I always tell my assistant referees and my TMO, just tell me, I love communication, just at downtime, during live play, tell me what you're thinking, tell me what you're seeing, and then I'll be able to make a decision, and I'll be able to make a better decision based on that context. So it's definitely something that over time I've just tried to develop, and I'm glad I did, because I definitely needed it in that game, because mate, it was full on warfare from the start.
Yeah, and even before the whole game, there was the controversial video from Rassie posting a 1 hour thoughts piece towards, I guess, the public and the refs, I guess. But how much of an impact did that have on you? Did you watch it at all?
No, mate, that was, what happened was unprecedented, really, in terms of what a coach had done. I guess publicly more than not, because I mean you probably know, you've been through team meetings, and coaches, after a game they will always send clips to referees, and sometimes I've been up to Six Nations before, and they'll actually send you, there'll be 30 clips that they'll send you. A lot of it's around clarity on what their team's doing, clarity on decisions, and also some things maybe to help you in the future. So it's quite common that happens. But it happens with a certain protocol in the background. So they'll send it to you. You'll go through, you'll do your own review, and then sort of by the Monday, Tuesday, that's when you'll give you a reply. So it's not uncommon for that to happen, for coaches to send out their opinions, and sometimes they are a bit emotive in that email, but it's all behind the scenes. So it was unprecedented, really, is that how it sort of everything was aired publicly, and it certainly it put a lot of things in perspective for us, because we do a massive review after every game, and we realised from that first test there were definitely things as a team we needed to work on. But like if a coach puts out 30 clips post game, I could do that in every game that I've ever done. I could do probably 50, because the game's so subjective. There's a lot of things that errors you make or non-decisions that you make that you're trying to, as a referee, you're trying to lessen that in the game so it doesn't have as much impact. But there's still always going to be that, if you look at it through one side, you're going to pick out 30 things. If you look at it from the other team's perspective, you're going to be able to do the same as well.
Yeah.
So that was the biggest thing. So when we did our review, we realised, look, there's stuff there that we need to fix as well. The TMO process, the amount of communication that we do together to make the right decision. So we went through and we reviewed that. And then I remember coming back from the gym on the Tuesday, and I read one of the articles. And I try not to, read too much media the week of a game, but it said about this video that had come out. And I was in the car with Nick Berry, who was refereeing that game, and he said, "Yeah, mate, I received it last night, and it's full on." And then when I got back to have lunch, we're with one of the South African guys that was in our bubble, and the first thing he said when we walked in was like, "Boys, do not watch that video." And I was sort of thinking it was a bit of a joke.
Yeah.
And I didn't realise the extent of it until it came out. The media called onto it, and it was just like teeing off in the background. And I said to him, I was like, "Mate, so like, how bad is it? Like, should I watch it at all?" And he said, "One thing you should not do this week, or probably ever, is ever watch it." So to be fair, and like the way it's played out, I haven't seen it. I think I've got better things to do than watch, one man's opinion for 62 minutes. So like, how did it impact us? I think it really just helped us focus to realise that, okay, we do need to be better as a team this weekend, but we'd sort of already worked that out in our review process. And what it kind of did was, for me personally, it kind of fired me up a little bit, because I felt like, it was a bit of a personal attack on the team, on officiating in general. And, the line was crossed. So I felt like, okay, I've got a bit of a responsibility to put a good performance out there, so that, people can just start talking about the game again, about, line series versus, the officiating.
Yeah. Did you mention it to Rassie before the game? You obviously speak to him before the game.
No, well, so, what's normal as well is that we have a coach meeting always before the test on the Saturday, and that coaches meeting normally is in person, but it was over Zoom in these situations. And in those meetings, they normally sort of bring up, okay, these are things that we've done, or these are things that we've been working on all week. Is it okay? Often they might bring up a few things that the other team does, but very rarely by then we've done our preparation. We've obviously, more than often than not, we've actually seen clips that they bring up, but very rarely does it actually influence us. So we had that meeting, and we were preparing which of the South African coaches were going to be on that call. Obviously with the Lions, you had Warren Gatlin, who was on their call as well. So we didn't actually see him on the call. It was just Jacques, the South African, or the Springbok coach, that was on that call. So it was a good discussion. We basically outlined what we thought about what had happened during the week, and we just the point of that meeting was really just trying to reassure them that, okay, despite what's happened in the media this week, we haven't really been reading too much into it. We know there's a few things we need to work on, but it's not going to have any impact on how we referee this weekend. And we need your team to trust that we're just going to do our job, and so therefore you guys can just do your job and not worry about all the external stuff. And I think they sort of took that on board, and they said, okay, great, okay, these guys are ready just to go out there and referee. So therefore we can trust that they're going to do that, and we can just trust and do our game as well. So yeah, we actually didn't see them until obviously had the Waterboy bib on, but we didn't really take too much notice. We just head down and just tried to referee the game.
Mate, it's interesting, eh? And you spoke about your prep coming up to the game, and what else is involved with that prep? I mean, it sounds way more intense than people would give it.
Yeah, I think I've had heaps of people, throughout my career, you sort of turn up, or you might be yarning to players after the game. And they'll be like, oh, so do you guys actually do any work before a game, or do you just rock up? And I think a lot of people think we just sort of chuck on the copers and then just rock up onto a field and blow the whistle. But no, we definitely do a lot more work than that. And certainly, the more work you do, the better performance you sort of put out in the weekend. But I sort of alluded to it. You review the game from the weekend before to try and pick up on anything that you need to work on specifically from that game. And then, much like teams, like we try and preview, the two teams that we are refereeing in the weekend. And previewing it is really just based on, okay, what does this team like to do? How do they try and play? Are they, do they go a lot of line out to maul? Do they try and scrum for penalties? Do they try and spread the ball wide? Because a lot of it's really around, okay, how do I get into the right position to make the right decision?
Yeah.
So there'll be a lot of that, which is team specific. And we've got coaches and people that help us do that. And then the rest of the week, apart from doing all your physical stuff like running and a bit of gym work, a lot of it is around just getting my philosophies and my game plan, so that I can referee the tackle correctly, I can referee the scrum, I can referee the line out. And so I've got a blueprint that I've developed over time, and that's what referees do. You sort of develop an understanding for a game, much like a player. And so I'm just constantly trying to reinforce that. And sometimes it will mean that I have to go out into a field and practice my positioning because I was a bit off the week before. I have to go down to a team training just to help referee their scrums, and it puts pictures in front of my head so I can be better at refereeing that. Or I just have to sit down and just watch lots of clips around tacklers and jacklers getting on the ball, just so that I'm a bit quicker in the weekend. So a lot of that is the preparation I'll do during the week. And for example, that Lions series, that's exactly what I did. But what I try and do is I try and front load a lot of it so that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the bulk of my work is and the theoretical stuff happens then. So then by Thursday and Friday, sort of the game, the night before, I'm really only thinking of maybe one or two things. So I can just wake up on Saturday, have a fresh mind, and then just go out and just trust. Okay, you've done the work. You can just have confidence in how you've been refereeing this year anyway. Just go out there and blow the whistle, because there are times when much like exams that I used to do, I was always trying to study the night before. I was trying to cram the morning of an exam, then I go out and try and do the exam. And I tried to do that with rugby really. And I remember I had a chat with Gilbert and Oka one year because my games were real up and down. I was having good games, I was having bad games. I was quite inconsistent. And he asked me what my process was, and I sort of said, look, I just try and study the game and study how I'm going to referee every day, Friday night and Saturday morning. And he said, look, if one of his All Blacks or one of his players was still going through all their notes this Saturday morning, he would grab that book and throw it out. He just wants one or two key things for their players. And so I took that on board. I trialled it when I was refereeing South Africa versus France. I talked to him about 3 years ago on the Monday, and I thought, I may as well try it because I've got to try something different, and it worked really well. So I try and just do that, and it often means I try and play a bit of golf on the Friday as well, just to clear the head, because that can be quite challenging too. Like you hit a bad shot, which happens a lot for me, and you got to just move on. It's the same thing in a game. You make a bad decision, and you just got to move on. So. I quite like sort of where I'm at in terms of how I prepare.
Mate, there's so much to it, eh? Way more than people could ever imagine, I'd imagine. So is it different when you're refereeing compared to when you're an assistant or a TMO? Does your prep change at all?
Yeah, it does, probably the extent of how much you prepare. When you're the lead referee and you're preparing for how you're going to lead that team and referee in the weekend, you're doing a lot of the work. You're actually... you'll lead a lot of the meetings that you'll have during the week with your assistant referees and your TMO, because you'll probably catch up maybe once or twice around, okay, this is what I'm saying, or guys, I want you to actually do a bit of work on, you're going to be on this side of the scrum, so I want you to have a look at how this team operates at scrum time. So, you'll then catch up and then go through sort of those key things that you think is important for this game, just so that you're on board.
Yeah.
So the referee will do a lot of that, but as an assistant referee, you actually have to train yourself that week, because the worst thing you can be as an assistant referee is try and referee the game. You're actually, as the assistant referee on the sideline, you're more focused on, watching, space, offsides. We have all this different type of role clarity when a kick goes up. So you've got a contestable kick. The referee's actually going to be watching the contest in the air, where the assistant referee is going to be watching the escort running on that sort of ground plane. So you've got to sort of train yourself. Okay, this weekend I'm the assistant referee. I've got to actually change what I'm looking at, what I'm focusing on. I'm going to be at the front of the line out, so I need to actually be focusing on, the front pod, what they're doing in the air. Does this team sack? Are they coming in the side of the maul? So you really have to change where you're looking at, because if you don't, then you're basically going to be missing things that your referee needs you to do to achieve that weekend. So there's definitely that aspect. And then if you're the assistant, if you're the AR1, there is a chance if you've got an old fella refereeing, if they pull up with a bit of a calf injury, you have to jump on, and that certainly happened to me a few times. That's how I got my Super Rugby debut, when Chris Pollock rolled his ankle doing skipping or something in the morning of his game, and then he gave me the call up and he said, "Yeah, you're out there." So you sort of have to prepare, knowing that, okay, what am I going to do if a scenario means that I have to actually run onto a field, halfway through or even before the game.
Were you prepared as a young fella then, being the AR1? Were you prepared for your debut that day?
Mate, like, if I'm honest with you, no way.
Yeah.
Like, I just thought I was just going to rock up. I was still getting used to being the AR1.
Yeah.
When I got the phone call from him, I thought he just wanted to catch up for coffee, but I sort of walked in. He was hobbling. He had this massive ankle on him. So we took him down and got him x-rayed and everything. And I didn't really realise until afterwards. It was about midday where I got the phone call from Lyndon Bray, who was our boss, and he said, "Well, you're up." And I thought, what does that mean? And then he, obviously it dawned on me that I was going to referee Super Rugby game, which is going to be Crusaders Highlanders. Which for anyone who's born in the South Island, it's a massive derby.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, what would I normally do during the week? Well, I'd normally have 5 days of preparation. Well, I've got about 4 hours, so what am I going to do? So I went back to the hotel and I just slept, and then got up and just went out and refereed. And I remember walking off the game being like, that was absolutely fantastic. I loved it.
Yeah.
And then about 6 or 7 sightings came through of foul play that I missed, and I realised I had a lot of paperwork that I needed to do. So, but it was certainly a good experience, that one.
Oh, mate, that's good times. But before we get too far into your refereeing career, we need to go back to the start, and we got a PB of questions coming for you. I mean, everyone wants to send in the ref questions, so you've got plenty to finish this podcast with. But we need to start at the start, like always. Growing up in Blenheim, what was your childhood like?
My childhood's amazing. It's one of the best town in the top of the South Island in Tasman. A lot of sunshine hours, so I loved it. Went to Marlborough Boys, and it was great growing up here. I kind of loved growing up in a small place because it was very easy to get around. Footy trainings, you play all types of sports because you could basically bike everywhere. And as I said, Marlborough Boys, playing rugby there, and grew up with some pretty good rugby players that came out of there, and it was just a really good place to sort of grow up in.
What position did you play?
Well, mate, I was sort of like, what happened to me is that I was quite tall. I was sort of this height when I was about 9, 10, 11. So I stayed, and I had a little bit of gas, so I stayed in the back. So I was a sort of second 5 centre, and then slowly got pushed out to fullback, and then even further out to the wing. But that's sort of like the position that I stayed at, because being this height, I was able just to run it straight and able to get through players, and so I didn't really work out the fine arts of fending and sidestepping and looking for space. So as I got a lot older and people started catching up with me height and sort of weight wise, I sort of started getting kicked out the back, and almost on the bench as well. So that was sort of my playing days for Marlborough Boys, and I certainly enjoyed it and had a great time.
Was that ever a dream of yours to play professional rugby? Was that a bit of a goal for you?
I think it was. Most Kiwi lads growing up, they want to be an All Black, and I was certainly that when I was playing for Marlborough Boys. It wasn't until I actually trialled down at varsity down in Dunedin where I started. Maybe I just lost that passion. I lost that love, but I didn't lose that love for the game. So my dad refereed in Marlborough. And growing up, I'd always be his water boy, and I'd hold the flag from sometimes, but I never watched him as if, geez, that's something that I want to be a referee one day, because I was too engrossed in playing, and wanted to be with my mates and all that. So it wasn't until university where I sort of lost that passion for playing, where he suggests you should give refereeing a crack. There's a bit of a pathway there now. So I guess I was like every other Kiwi lad, just trying to grow up, play rugby, and see how far you could go.
So how was it when you first gave it a crack refereeing? Did you love it, or tough gig?
I don't know. I still really can't remember it. The first day I turned up, I tell the story where I was on Cumberland Street in Dunedin, which is like the main drag just outside of North Ground. And back then, you sort of you received your emails on the computer and on a laptop. You didn't have a smartphone, or certainly, I was just running the old Nokia brick back then. And so this team was warming up on a Saturday, and about 1:45, and I saw that they didn't have a referee, so that was I thought that was a bit crazy. And they're warming up, and then I just checked my emails, and I'd received an email on the Tuesday saying that my first game was on Saturday at North Ground at 1 o'clock. So the two teams that were warming up and me sitting there being like, "Where's that referee?" They're actually waiting for me to turn up. So I grabbed my boots, and I had a whistle that I had as well, and I ran over there, and I had to borrow the coach's watch to kick the game off because I didn't have my own watch. And mate, to this day, like I mean, it wouldn't have been recorded or anything, but I reckon I would have been awful because, every year you referee, you look back to the year before, and you sort of look at it and you go, "Wow, okay, I can't believe I was doing that. I can't believe I was making those decisions." So this is a good almost 12 years ago now. So I didn't really know what I was doing as much as potentially what I'm definitely a bit better now than my first day then.
Oh, 100%. Did you have doubts after it? Did you enjoy the process, or did you cop any criticism out there while you're doing it? Because I mean, refs are never shy of copping criticism.
Yeah, we cop a lot of criticism. A lot of it's part of the game in terms of passion. But I remember back then, like for me, because I'd really I didn't see myself. I was never going to achieve being a great player. I just wanted it to stay part of the game. So it was really ticking that box for me. I'd go out on the weekend. I'd referee a club game in Dunedin. And it just got me outside. It got me involved in sport, and I could just go back into my studies during the week. So for me, it was just about I really enjoyed that aspect of it because it was a big part of my life down in Dunedin, and Dunedin was a great place to be able to do it because again, it's kind of a smaller town. You can get around, you make a lot of good friends, and it meant that I could just be involved in rugby still.
And I guess it gave you a bit more time to focus on your studies because you are a very intelligent man. Eye surgeon, is it?
Yeah, well, I don't know if I'd say intelligent, but I just do the time and put my head in the books. And I studied medicine down in Dunedin, and it's a 6-year gig. And then once you graduate, you do a rotation around different medical and surgical specialties. And I realised early on that I really like sort of fixing things and sort of hands-on stuff. So that sort of moved me down the surgical route, and then I found ophthalmology, which is eye medicine, and the benefit that you can give to people and patients, and some of the things that you can do is pretty amazing. So I did that for a few years full time, and then I was offered a full time contract to referee rugby, and I was lucky because it was kind of at the point where I was working full time Monday to Friday, doing on calls during the week as well, flying Friday for a Mitre 10 Cup game or a Super Rugby game Saturday. So you fly Friday, do the game Saturday, come back Sunday, and I was straight back into it on Monday. So it was getting pretty full on. And then it got to a point where, I was, you might have a clinic that it's meant to finish at 4, but if anyone's been into the hospital, that, you're probably not seen until 7 p.m. So, there were some clinics that were running well over time just because the day was busy. And then I was starting to miss flights to games, and then, that would affect the preparation for my next game, for the game the next day. And so it really came at the perfect time when they offered me this contract. And I thought, well, I'm going to give it a crack. I don't know how long it's going to last for. I might do one game and then they'll punt me. But so now it's really good. It's really flexible. So I can just work as a locum in the eye clinics around New Zealand. And it might mean, I work 1 to 2 days a week, and it really helps to get away from, you go back to copying the criticism. Sometimes it's nice just to get away from rugby. So can put some things into perspective.
So do you actually perform the eye surgery?
So part of my job is I'll be a junior registrar. So you have your consultants doing all the really big surgeries. So the cataract operations, they'll work at the retina at the back of the eye and, fixed attachments and things like that. So what I do is if you come in, if you've got, something in your eye, you've got an eye infection or your eye's inflamed, I'll be the first person that you see. Yeah. I'll assess you, I'll treat you, I'll try and diagnose what's going on. And if it's something that I can treat, so for example, if I just need to do a bit of laser to fix a tear that's at the back of your eye, your retina, I'll be able to do that. Some people need injections in their eye. Some people just need drops just to treat an infection that they have, and then I'll book them in to see me again in a few days. So that's generally what it is. And then when you do go to surgery sometimes, and you're assisting your consultant, and they might say, look, hold this, hold that, and you're really, you're basically another pair of hands for them. So it's pretty exciting to be able to do that kind of stuff.
Do you feel a lot of pressure when you're in those rooms, more so than refereeing?
Yeah, like I think it's a different pressure for sure. Like the pressure that you get in rugby, I think is more personal. It's like your name that's in the media. It's your name that's making the headlines. It's your picture on the front page.
Yeah.
Versus this is, in medicine, it's actually, you're trying to treat someone's health, and you're trying to make them better. There are fine margins between making the right decision, making the wrong decision, and if things go wrong, it can really affect the long-term outcome for someone. So the pressure there, I think, is a lot higher. And I've worked in emergency departments before where patients come in and you're in the resus bay and things are full on. I would say that's pressure, because you're having to make these decisions with the help of colleagues that are going to impact someone's life potentially. So I always thought that helped me, because I've been in an environment where there is a lot of pressure involved, but also the rugby environment helps me in my medicine as well, because a lot of, I guess, parallels in medicine and rugby is your communication, how you manage people, and that's what you have to do in medicine as well. Like if you can't communicate correctly or answer the right questions to a patient, they're not going to basically tell you what's wrong with them. And it's the same thing when you're trying to deal with a fired up captain or a seven who thinks that they should have won the ball when you said actually they're off their feet. So so some really good parallels there, which I've enjoyed.
Mate, you love it. You love the pressure. And talk to me about coming through the ranks. So obviously you're a young ref when you first started out. Well, I think it was 18 years old, were you?
Yeah, I was 18, 19, so I was sort of that first, second year at uni. You remember when you were playing sevens for Tasman, and I'd actually drive over from Blenheim. This is like years and years ago.
True.
And I'd referee all your training games.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's probably one of the first times that I met you.
True.
And I remember, like, after the game, you sort of came after the training, you came up and you're like, oh, mate, so where do you live in now? And I was like, no, bro, I drive over from Blenheim every day. And you're like, oh, mate, look, come on, come home. We'll get you around. You can stay the night when you can, come back to training tomorrow.
Yeah.
Now I ended up, obviously I went back to Blenheim. I got back to the family there, but I always thought like, oh, geez, he's a good man, and that's why it's always been good to catch up with you during
Mate,
games. Since then,
I can't believe that was you. I can't believe that was you, the ref. Hey?
Yeah.
Jeez, you've come a long way since then.
Well, that's the thing. You've probably blocked me out so far. It was so bad since then, but yeah, no, that was one of my first memories of him. So
true.
It was bloody good times,
eh? Yeah. Shit, yeah, it's going back. And then you progressed through the ranks pretty quickly, didn't you? So you would have been a young refereeing NPC at the time. How was that? How was it going into that environment?
Yeah, it was pretty daunting. Like, I think then, like, we had a lot of support. So there was an older group of professional referees who they really sort of took me under their wing, and they were able to help me in terms of okay, you're the young kid on the block. There's a lot of potential there, but there's a lot of stuff that you need to learn. So I tried to learn and take as much in as I could from them, so that when I did go out and do those games, my debut game, which was Auckland versus Bay of Plenty, I just really wanted to go out there, experience it. But also a lot of it is you can be told all this stuff around how to referee a game. You can read up on the law book, but until you're actually out there, it's actually really difficult to until you see those pictures. So it really all my learning really started once you actually got in the middle, and you made some good decisions, you made some poor decisions, you then review the game, and then that's how you got better week by week by week. And I think back then it was a little bit more daunting because the players were a bit older than me.
Yeah. But
pretty quickly, the players got younger or I got older, and then you started realizing that actually, okay, you got a bit of confidence, you got a bit of experience, and you can just go out there and just do your job, and people will trust that.
Yeah. And is there any games that stand out as you progressed through your ranks?
Yeah, I think like there's been great games that I've been involved in because the games are great. There've been games where people necessarily probably didn't think the game was fantastic, but I was really proud of how I refereed. There's also really tough games that I thought I did a good job in, but there's also games where I didn't do well in, and that's where your biggest learnings from. So all those sort of milestone games. I think my first Heartland game on the West Coast, my first Mitre 10 Cup game, which is Bunnings now, my first Super Rugby game, which when I was thrown into that one that I mentioned before.
Yeah.
And then my first test match, which was in Samoa, and then my first tier 1 test match, which was in Scotland. All those sort of levels were definitely were good experiences, because every sort of level is slightly refereed differently to the next. So when you do reach that next level, you really are back to a level playing field again. You've got to start learning as you go, and until you get the experience, you don't really know. So they were all really good. And then, like, to top them off with the World Cup in 2019, and I think just coming back from South Africa, even though during the time, it was a hell of an experience, I'd say that was really, one of those games that and probably the series, that I'll remember for the rest of my career.
Yeah, you spoke about the Rugby World Cup there. Obviously, being a Rugby World Cup referee is one of the, I guess, ultimate goals as a referee. And that Japan tournament was unreal. What's it like traveling as a referee? Are you all together? Do you travel all together, or what's it sort of look like?
Yeah, so traveling, obviously pre-COVID, before we had all this business that was happening now, there were about 4 international windows that you travel in a year, and that's on top of Super Rugby traveling to South Africa, Australia, Argentina, and Japan. So 4 of those windows you travel. So 6 Nations, Rugby Championship, and then the 2 windows where the North comes down here and then the South goes up north. So as a referee, you'd normally travel, and you'd probably be appointed if you're on a series with 2 other assistant referees and a TMO. Now, they weren't local, so they would all come from another country as well. So they'd fly in from France. They might fly in from England, for example, if you had Wayne Barnes or Luke Pearce. So you'd generally all, if you're in South Africa, you'd all fly in on the Monday, and then you'd stay together for the 3 weeks. And, during those 3 weeks, you'd prepare together, you'd train together, you'd be in the same hotel, and you'd travel together to the different locations that you do the games. Sometimes if you were refereeing in the November internationals, you'd fly up there, and your assistant referee might be from France. They'd come back and forth. So you'd just be by yourself the whole time.
Yeah.
So what I really liked about it compared to, I don't know, like, you'd be able to know when, you're playing. For me, the number of maybe 4 people trying to get around to do something logistically was a lot easier potentially than, I've been with Nick Berry, Jamie Nutbrown, Glenn Jackson, all ex-players as well. And they really, it took them a wee while to get used to being a referee in the way that we travelled, because they were very much used to, at this time we do this, at this time we got breakfast, at this time we're getting on the bus, we're all going together. So it was a very structured day, which, they really loved. Where for us, it was like, if I was refereeing that weekend, I'd sort of lead the week and say, guys, this is what on Monday, this is what I want to do today. We're going to train at 9 o'clock. We're going to have a review session at 3 p.m. In between, it's just your own time, and then we'll catch up for dinner at 6. And sort of every day you sort of do that. So it was quite good, because you could just decide, the weather's good. All right, so we're going to actually go for a drive down the coast or something, or we'll go for a run on the beach together, and versus having to be so strict on what we're doing. So that's kind of what I guess a week is for a referee, and obviously when you're traveling, it's good as well. So that was one of the bonuses of finally getting back to South Africa. Because we've been sort of stuck at home for the last 2 years now, and I was getting itchy feet, and the jobs at home were sort of stacking up. So it's good to get away.
Mate, it's all interesting stuff. And at that Rugby World Cup, you were in charge of refereeing Japan, Scotland, one of the great games of the tournament. And I think your performance in that game was almost a 10 out of 10 performance from a referee. When you have a game like that, do you know you're having a good game when you come off the field?
Yeah, look, I think you don't really know until after you've blown the final whistle, because you could referee a game, and in your own mind, or when you review, you could referee 79 minutes of that game perfectly.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, in that last minute, or one thing happens in the game, and all of a sudden it's a train wreck.
Yeah.
So it's more, as a referee, like, you just want to do a great job for the players. You want to set up guidelines so that they can adapt and they can actually express their skills. So then, if you can do that, and then you walk off the game, you're more just relieved. You're more just like, okay, I don't think they're going to talk about me in that one. I'm really proud of what I did, and you can just sort of enjoy, reviewing that game.
Yeah.
So when I refereed that game, I knew, like, it was sort of like a really disrupted week again, because we had the typhoon. We weren't sure if the game was going to go ahead, and we had this game that had 70,000 people there, a few million people watching, in Japan worldwide, and it really was a quarterfinal. Like to almost do a type of playoff game where everything was riding on this game. Again, I just loved the challenge, and I thought I got a really good balance of how I refereed and how I let the players play. And I think at the end of the day, the outcome was based on what the players did. And that's, I think, all you want to do as a referee. You just want to be in the background, step in when you need to, if you need to, but otherwise let the players play and enjoy it.
Yeah, it's awesome. And you mentioned avoiding the headlines. So how much criticism do you get after a game, like a general game, and how do you handle it? How have you learnt to handle that? Because you obviously be copping criticism for any game, no matter, even if it is a perfect game.
Yeah, you do. Like, that's the nature of rugby and supporters, like I think supporters, they think you've had a perfect game when you get everything that the other team has got wrong, and you miss everything that they've got wrong. So they're always going to have an opinion on how you referee. But I think that's like, people ask, okay, what's the difference between going between different levels? And I remember going from Mitre 10 Cup to Super Rugby. Like, yes, the game was faster, but the players were at a higher level, so actually they did a lot of the accuracy for you. So it was easier to referee. I've always said that you should really start people refereeing at test matches, because I think that's a lot easier than potentially doing under 15s where everyone's just scrambling for the ball. So that's like, when you talk about, okay, what's the hardest thing at the next level? It's really just that public attention, or that external attention that happens before the game and after a game. And I sort of joked, like, you go to South Africa and they love rugby over there. They've got talk shows going all week, versus in New Zealand, we've got a few shows on the Monday, Tuesday, and then, we get on with it. And, they're full on there, even as we saw with the Lion series recently. So I always found, and with social media now, that's just probably open access to a lot of individuals and referees including. And, I've got Instagram, I've got, Facebook, because it's a really good avenue for, when you're traveling, contacting friends, being in touch with family when you're away as well. But I've always said, like, if you do a game in South Africa, or, potentially anywhere in the world now, if you only get 5 private messages abusing you afterwards, you've probably had an all right game. But, sometimes you'll get up to 15, 20, and then you sort of know, okay, maybe I did miss a forward pass. And like, the sad thing is, like, it can get quite personal. Like, these are just people that I don't know, but, they're talking about you, your decisions, your family, all that kind of stuff. So it gets pretty negative. And I think, it's really hard, because, I'm a human being, we're all human beings. When you read that kind of stuff, especially in the first few years, it's real hard to sort of be able to cope with that and deal with that. And you start second guessing yourself and second guessing your ability, even before you've been able to review your game. You've literally just got off, you're probably on the bus ride home.
Yeah.
So, so now, like, okay, I've sort of grown up with it now, where I find it a little bit more funnier that these guys can just do that. And, often I'll screenshot a lot of them and share them with friends and family. And, it just helps just by talking about it.
Yeah.
But I know it's probably the same. And, I've read articles that also get stuck into players too. So I think everyone involved in rugby, no one's really immune to it. But certainly what's helped is, even before the second test in South Africa, I just deleted all my social media and all my apps. All my newspaper apps as well, just because I just wanted to try and stay away from it, because I know that, sometimes, even though, I feel like I'm pretty mentally strong, sometimes that one headline or that one little opinion can just sort of, break the shackles and get through, and then you start doubting yourself again. So it's a tough one. Like, it's something that I don't think is ever going to change. And, I mentioned some older referees before, like, Glenn Jackson and Bryce Lawrence and all that. Well, they never had really that issue, because they didn't grow up with, what we've all got now with social media. So it's definitely something that I think is the big change from, okay, how do you deal with it when you start doing those big games? And I think now, the more games you do, the more times that, people will see you and you'll referee a team, and, there'll be perceived injustices against that team. So I think, that's why, someone like Wayne Barnes and Nigel Owens, all those guys, they've been at the top level for 10 plus years, and that's why they're fantastic referees. But generally, the more you do, the more games, there's going to be at least one game where they don't agree with your decision, and then and that's all they remember you for.
Mate, 100%, especially Wayne Barnes. He's a perfect example here in New Zealand, eh? One forward pass, how many years ago was it? Plenty. And he still cops it, eh?
He does, and I feel sorry for him, because, like, he's easily one of the best referees in the world right now, and has been for a long time. And I actually, it was interesting. So, once I sort of got to this level and I started understanding, okay, how do you referee test matches? I actually went back and I watched that game. Because now when I watch a game of rugby, unfortunately, you sort of referee it in your mind, as you're watching
Yeah.
the game. So I watched it from that point of view, just to see, okay, what do people have an actual say in actually in how he referee? Did he do a good job or not? And mate, I watched that game, and he nailed it. Like, he refereed that game so well.
Yeah.
And then the forward pass came along, and I said, well, look, any referee that refereed that game, you're never in the position to be able to see that. Like, there's no way. I don't know. I can't remember who made that break, when the French players, but we referees, we referee a reason. It's because we can't keep up, with guys like yourself and players in a game. So, back in the day, like, they weren't able to use the TMO to check forward passes.
Yeah.
So I really felt sorry for him, because he was in a lose-lose situation with that, unfortunately.
Mate, 100%. Has it ever put you off refereeing? Has it ever got to the point where you're like, oh, I can't be bothered copying this abuse anymore. I've had a guts full.
No, like, it hasn't. I think for me at the moment, the benefits of being involved in those games, the feeling you get after you've done a good job after a game, the travel, the people that you get to meet, sort of outweighs those perceived negatives at the moment. But
Yeah.
all it probably takes is some experiences, that potentially that we've had in the Lions, that you could get at World Cups, that could really be the tipping point for some. But I think at the moment, like, I'm quite lucky. I managed to sort of get through the whole social media and that side of things quite quickly. So I'm able to just to laugh at that kind of stuff now. And I've done, I show people, and it's quite funny. Like, I remember doing a game with Angus Gardner once, and we were both copying stuff after the game, and I was only the assistant referee, and so we were just like showing each other what we're receiving, and it's just really good to have a laugh about it, because at the end, look, we definitely put our hands up when we make errors, and
Yeah.
we definitely work hard to be accountable. We'll review our games so that we can be better, because if we don't get better, we will stop getting those appointments. So we sort of just see it for what it is. It's just someone who is so angry that they can actually search and sit down and even type my last name correctly. Okay, good on them, but it doesn't really impact me anymore, fortunately.
Very good. But anyway, mate, what's the plans for you? Have you got much of a plan in terms of your refereeing career? Have you got goals in line?
Yeah, mate. Look, I've always just wanted to referee the highest level. Like, I love the challenge of what's the biggest game, and being involved in those games. And I really feel that over the years I've built a skill set that I think helps those games, and I think helps players just enjoy those games as well. So for me, big goals for me were obviously the World Cup and the Lions series. So I've been able to do that. So now it's just continually refereeing the top levels a massive goal for me. And I just want to do it for as long as I can. I don't have aspirations or goals to referee a World Cup final. I think they're unrealistic, because at the end of the day, I want the All Blacks to win the World Cup final. So if they're going to win the World Cup final, well, I can't referee that, because you can't referee your own country.
Yeah.
Normally. So for me, I just want to be involved in those big games and referee at that level as long as I can. And I think the day will come where hopefully I can give all my learnings to a younger referee, and eventually one day that referee will take over and surpass me, and I think that'll be the day that I'll hang up the boots. But I'll just be really keen just to stay involved for as long as I can. And I think that on the horizon there's another World Cup in France coming up in 2023. There's another Lions series. You roll that around again in Australia coming up as well, and then another World Cup after that. I think potentially I'm at an age now where I could go to a few. And I know that if I can do that, then I only want to do that if I'm refereeing at the absolute top level. So, I'll try and keep challenging myself to be better and to keep doing that.
And what's the hardest part to be able to stay on top of your game in terms of age? Is it just the fitness requirements, the speed, or just the mental fatigue from being a ref for so long?
I think it's just the body,
Yeah.
We referee for a reason, just because we don't want to take too many knocks, and hopefully we don't. Although Brendan Pickerel took a good knock in the All Black game in the weekend, which is good.
He copped it.
Yeah, well, I'll keep reminding him of that. But it's generally like, the older you get, the more experience you get. You've been through those experiences where you've learned from it. You've got those scars on your back. So the wiser, the older you get, the better you are as a referee. So that's why someone like Wayne Barnes, Jarko Piper, they've been at the top level for so long, because they've been through all the ups and downs. They've learned everything, and they're actually at a point now where all those learnings that have happened have meant that, okay, they make mistakes. They don't make a lot of mistakes during a game, and if they do make a mistake, they're not massive just because of the time they spend in the middle. So if you keep refereeing well like that, you're going to keep being selected. So the only thing that limits you is your body, and if you physically keeping up with the game isn't too hard because we don't have to stay on side. We can run these running lines where we can chop and change in and out of the D line, and we can get to the next breakdown before the half out because we can just run there and we don't need to stay on side. We can sort of just run into space. So, but the older you get, a lot of referees get niggles with the hamstrings, calves. So a lot of our gym work that we do, we're not trying to get massive. We're just trying to do a lot of injury prevention. So we'll work out lower body, upper body, just so that we can stay fit and just stay conditioned to be able to referee. Because we probably run about 9 kilometers in a game, and it's very much stop start.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So we chuck all the old GPS units on, just like you guys, and it's about 9 kilometers. But that high intensity stuff is probably a lot lower than what probably the backs would do.
Yeah.
We're not having to get down and up like a lot of the forwards. So we're almost like marathon runners compared to probably your sprinters or your middle distance or short distance like some of the players are. So if you can keep your fitness up like that and you can stay injury free, then that's why you get someone like Nigel Owens who, but I think he retired at 47. I think Romain Poit right now, French referee, still refereeing at about 45. Jerome Garcia is about 45 as well. So you sort of get to the mid 40s where, if you can still keep up with the play basically by staying on the field and being fit, then there's no reason why you wouldn't be continually being selected, because by then, you understand the game pretty well and how it should be refereed, and I think people have accepted your style by then that you should be able to referee for a few more years.
Do you have fitness requirements you have to live up to be a referee?
Yeah, we do. We get tested so twice a year through World Rugby, and you have to run a Bronco, which is that new sort of test they've brought in over the last 4 or 5 years. And I think to referee certain levels. So if you wanted to referee Bunnings NBC, you got to get maybe under 5:15.
Oh yeah.
If you want to referee at test match level, you got to get under 5. But a lot of the referees, at that test match level, some of the quickest would be running 4 minutes 30.
True.
I think James Dolman in New Zealand was a 4:25.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, mate, it's quick, and he blew us all away. So most of us are sort of between that 4:45 mark. Because to be honest, 4:45 is really good. It's amazing, and you probably don't need to be going any quicker to be refereeing a game. Because the big part about refereeing is that you need to be fit to be able to make a decision and have a clear mind. So you need to be able to run that 8 kilometers in a game, be in the 75th minute, and the Lions decider at 16-all, and then still have a clear mind after running 50 meters to a breakdown to be able to make the right decision. So that's really the most important thing around fitness for us is being able to make those decisions after you're fatigued.
Have you ever been in a game where you're just completely gassed and you can't really keep up?
Yeah, there's one game and it was all of us really, all the players. I refereed South Africa versus Australia in Bloemfontein. So in the hive out at altitude, and Bloemfontein was about 35 degrees, so it was hot as well. And obviously you fly into South Africa, you fly in on the Monday, and you're a little bit jet lagged, but at altitude you're trying to train as well. So I try and run as much as I can during the week just to what it's like, just to get those lungs at that level. And mate, I remember, I think for the first 5 minutes we didn't have one stoppage. It was back and forth. Israel Folau was cutting through gaps, and we had Hundred Pollard running through for South Africa as well, and it just went back and forth at altitude, 30-degree heat. And there was no stoppages for injuries. We didn't have a scrum. And so for 5 minutes, and then finally I think we had, the ball got kicked into in goal, and I just, there wasn't a grounding, but I was like, mate, guys, we're going to check this. We're going to take time off. And I think everyone looked at me and they just patted me on the back. They said, thank you. And all the technicians came on and got the water on. That was one moment where I was absolutely gassed. And it was really uncomfortable, because, you're trying to make these decisions, you're running back and forth. But then, funnily enough, after we had a bit of a break, a bit of water, we're straight into the game. You sort of just got into that groove. So
second wind.
Yeah, it was probably the only time second wind for 75 minutes. It was good.
If you make a poor decision early in the game, does that affect you? Do you feel that when you're refereeing the rest of the game?
Yeah, well, that's one of the real early things you need to learn as a referee, is how you move on from a decision, whether you think it's correct or not. you've got to be able to, in a way, move on to the next decision with a clear mind, without any influence from that previous decision. Because if you're running around and you think, geez, I don't know if that last penalty was correct, or you saw it on the big screen, you're like, oh, that was wrong, and then you're thinking about that when you go into the next decision. Well, you might make that decision, that might be wrong, and then it starts snowballing for the rest of the game. So, early on in my career, that's something really that you got to try and work on. I know a lot of people, not a lot of referees and maybe players, you got these certain things that you do during a game just to be able to, keep yourself in the moment. I know some referees sort of, they might replace their whistle, take their whistle off, put it back on. They might slap their thigh. For me, I sort of just tell myself, just trust and enjoy. So just obviously just to keep enjoying the game, but just trust that, in the moment, you're going to be right 9 times out of 10, pretty much. And the reason that I built it up is that, there were times in games where I thought, oh, geez, I'm not sure about that decision. And then when I reviewed the game, I was actually correct. And so that happened a few times and then I started realizing, well, actually, a lot of the times you are correct. So whenever you get that doubt in your mind, just move on. You're probably going to be right. Move on to the next one and get that next one right. Because, you will make, in a game of rugby, a referee the decisions that they make, 90% of the decisions might be accurate. There might be 12 non-decisions in a game. So decisions where, a player came in the side and they should have penalised that. And there might be maybe 2 errors in the game. And that's sort of across the board is how games are refereed right now, because, that's how it's tracked. So, like I know that, in a game, you just got to be comfortable. It's just making sure that, those big ones, you're not getting wrong. And that's a big part of it. And like a big one I had a few weeks ago was Mariko Koroibete in the Australia-France game.
Yeah, I got a few questions about that one, actually.
Oh, mate, I'll probably be able to. I had a few questions myself. But, like the thing around, what we're trying to do, or what World Rugby's trying to do, is that, they're bringing in laws. And it's kind of like what I said, you learn a lot of it theoretically. And until you're actually out in the moment, you're not, you actually don't know how to implement it fully. So, in that moment, I gave a red card because I thought, okay, there's danger. He's come from distance. We do have an angle where there's direct contact to the head. So therefore, it's a red card, even though every bone in my body in that moment was saying, this is not a red card. And that's one of the more frustrating things for me that happened after the game, is that, I've given bad red cards before, so I've learned from that. I've learned that, I even have we've got a little booklet with your cards in it. So normally you just have a yellow and a red. Like my booklet has yellow, open it up, yellow, and then a red. So I've got to really go through to actually give a red card. I've got to go through those barriers to actually break through to be able to give it.
Yeah.
So that was more the frustrating thing, is I felt like I had learned from that. When it came out that, look, okay, there is actually shoulder contact first, because the head comes forward and then the head touches the shoulder. Therefore, it's mitigated down to a yellow in the review. I sort of looked at that and I was like, okay, I understand that. And all I learned was, Ben, just stay with your instinct, stay with your gut, stay with, the experience and, what's got you to this level to be able to make those correct decisions. So, that was a big part of that. But in that moment, I knew that it was a big decision. It was 4 minutes into a test match, which was a decider, it was 1-1. And I just thought, look, we're going to look at, okay, whatever this decision is, whether it's right or wrong, we're going to review it after the game. What I must do is referee the next 76 minutes really accurately and really well. And I knew I'd refereed really well all season in Super Rugby, and I just knew, look, again, just trust and enjoy. So enjoy it, but trust that, you're going to be able to referee the rest of the match. And, it was a really challenging game. It stayed tight right to the end. But I reviewed that game and I thought, look, I thought I refereed really well. But kind of like what I said before, was that game a pass mark? Probably not, because in that one moment, I gave an incorrect decision, which definitely impacted the game.
Yeah.
And as a referee, you don't want to do that. So I was just grateful. Look, you got to take those learnings on board, and I think I get a situation like that in the future, I'm definitely going to be better off, because I'll know a way where, look, we'll still give red cards, but I'll just be a little bit smarter in terms of, okay, looking at that picture fully and actually trusting my gut more. And to be fair, I believe that experience actually helped me, deliver the performance that I needed to do in the Lions series, and be smart around the foul play, which was just happening left, right, and centre in that game.
Mate, it's so hard, eh? And is the game referee different in different hemispheres? Because we talk about red cards, and there's 100 times more red cards up in the English Premiership than there is at Super Rugby. So is there different interpretations for a referee around the red cards?
Well, no, like there shouldn't be, because World Rugby put out the guidelines for what a red card should be, and that has been constantly tweaked and adapted, and potentially that's why you have differences that are happening between the Northern Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere. But I mean, I also think that the style of rugby is different between the North and the South. So therefore, you've played up there. Therefore, there's probably more of those one-on-one contact situations, versus maybe in the Southern Hemisphere where the ball's probably spread a bit wider. So you try and actually beat someone on the outside. So there's more of a lower tackle around the legs to stop them, potentially, because actually, the law and what we're told, and we have regular meetings with the North and the South. We should be all following the same sort of guidelines. And I guess like one difference is that, as Kiwi referees, we had a whole season of Super Rugby at those new laws before everyone else did. So I felt like we got a really good full year under our belt of experience. So we sort of got through that learning process where, a few years ago when the Northern Hemisphere finally got rugby going on, they started going through that process as well. So, it took them a bit of time to probably catch up to where we're at in terms of understanding foul play and the tackle and I guess the new law trials.
Mate, it's all so interesting. I love it. But as always, we've gone to our Instagram, and like I said at the start, you've come up with so many, so we better crack on to some of these questions before we have to turn it into a mini-series. But first question, have you ever thought about swapping codes and reffing in the NRL?
Look, I've never thought about it, but when I watch a game, I think, geez, that's pretty easy. Like they use the TMO every try. I only have to count to 6.
Two refs.
Two refs. They stand 20 meters away. So, now that I think about it, I reckon that'd be a pretty cruisy job. So maybe it's like a retirement gig I can do. I have thought about like we had one of our ex-referees became the cricket manager, umpire manager in New Zealand. And I thought, geez, that'd be an interesting one, like being able to be a cricket umpire. But then I realised, like, I've got concentration that lasts, I could probably, do an 80-minute game, maybe if there's a bit of extra time, squeeze an extra 20 minutes. The concentration I think cricket umpires have to be there on a 5-day, all day, standing at the crease would be really tough. So I haven't really considered. I think I'm still just trying to improve and get better at refereeing. So we'll keep at that job first.
Mate, it would be cool to see. It would be cool to see a ref switch codes. It'd be like the big TJ announcement off to the NRL.
Well, we had like John O'Brien, who was I think he was like the world's best netball umpire, and now he's refereeing in Bunnings NBC and doing a great job.
He had us in the weekend,
yeah. I think that's probably one of his first Bunnings games. So he's doing a great job. But I reckon like one game they should get a rugby referee is on that. Is it the Black Clash or the when they get the footy players?
Yeah,
should do that. But I reckon
there's your gig. That's your
That'll be an embarrassment. You just be like sixes and no balls and stuff. So. I'll keep myself in the middle of the rugby field.
No, mate, we'll sort that one out. Surely the next umpire at the Black Clash. Righto, next one. Biggest spray from a player.
Look, I think you get a lot of sprays from players. I'm sure you've yelled at me something once, in a game.
Never.
But you don't really remember. Like a lot of it is passion. So, I've had a lot of sprays, but then, often a player will come up and say, look, I'm sorry, like that was just in the moment. So you move on. But I think, one of the funniest ones was, I think a few months ago when I had the Hurricanes Highlanders game and
Kelsey.
Yeah, I know. And I did that thing, like, because football umpires, they actually pull out the yellow card early. And this is something, I do watch other umpires in different sports.
Yeah.
So they pull out their card early so they don't get players rushing in and, people know that, okay, the referee's going to deal with it. So I sort of try to do that in union as well, where, like, if I've got a yellow card coming up, I'll just pull it out so that, okay, everyone knows, so I don't need the other captain complaining, asking for a yellow card. Mm. And obviously when I pulled it out, he was like, what's that? And then he said something like, we're just trying to have a bit of fun. And mate, I don't like my style of how I like to referee is, I always listen. I'll always engage with the player, and I'll never try and ignore them.
Yeah.
But I bit back and I said, like, not tonight. So he said, we're just trying to have a bit of fun. I said, not tonight. And it was just a reaction. But he was really good about it. And he came back on and said, look, okay, I'll be better now. We'll have a we'll have a bit of proper fun. So that was probably one of the good moments.
Oh, mate, it's so good. And we've had heaps of questions sent in about Colesy. What is Dane Coles like to ref?
Mate, like I don't understand why there's all these questions about him, because I reckon he's fantastic.
Yeah.
I reckon, and like he's one of those older players now where I think he's been there, he's done that. He understands the game. He understands referees as well. He knows that we're not going to get everything right. So, if he sees like a mistake that we've made, or, we give him an answer that he doesn't really buy, he'll just, he'll roll his eyes, but he'll always do it with a smile.
Yeah.
But he'll go out, but he'll do that just after, like, putting a massive hit on someone, and then he'll drop a shoulder on someone as well. So, he's certainly, I think he's a great player to deal with. I think there's a lot of players, especially in New Zealand, because we've been able to referee them a lot more, just because we've stayed locally. It's been really good. I think we've got some really good characters in the game.
For sure, and a lot of them have come on here, actually. Okay, tips for young referees wanting to make a career in refereeing.
Yeah, like I think that's a real common question that I get, and one thing I always there were probably two things where I think it's really important to like play rugby, or at least be a fan of it and watch it, because the more you watch rugby or you play, the more you're obviously going to enjoy it, but also the more you can actually understand how games are played. It's like I say that about commentators as well. You get the commentators that we have right now, they've either played or they've been commentators for 20 years. So I was always amazed that they would be watching a game and they just sort of understand the nuances really well, but it's just because they've watched it. They're a student of the game. So I'd say just try and be involved or watch as much rugby as you can. But probably the biggest thing is just always ask for advice. I'm refereeing some of the top games in the world now, but I'm still always asking for advice, because you never know, what kind of gem you can get, either from a player, from a coach, from another referee, from a spectator just watching. And I remember, when I was young and coming through, I never tried to think that I always knew everything about a game, because you don't, and you never do. So because I always wanted to get better, I always knew that, okay, there's a lot of better referees out there. There's a lot of better people that understand the game more than I do. So, okay, let's try and understand how much they know, and then I'll be able to progress for them. And that's what I always try and do with referees. Like, I'll always be open to trying to, push on them as much as I know, so that they can at least take a little part of it, adapt it into their own style or their own way, and then go out there and hopefully do a better job than I could do. That's definitely my goal. And I know that over the years, I've taken certain, skill sets from particular referees, like, the way that Nigel Owens manages players, Glenn Jackson's read in the game, Wayne Barnes's, just experience, Jaco Piper's technical ability. I try and, take aspects and mold that into my own game. And I could only really do that by asking and talking with people, because, you don't know what you don't know, right? So it's really important when, you do get people's opinions. And I mean, like a lot of opinions that you get in social media, you sort of got to dredge through all the negative stuff, all the bad stuff. But, there's definitely a lot of stuff there. And I've only got to a position now by listening to a lot of people. And, so that would be my biggest advice to any referee that wants to, potentially carve a pathway in refereeing, because it's, it's fantastic career.
Yeah, mate, that's good stuff. And that sort of leads on to the next one. You mentioned a few good referees there, but who is the best referee in the world, in your opinion?
So me, I think easily, it's Wayne Barnes. And so that's current referee. And I think, he's probably been one of the best for the last few years as well, even though, he's right up there with, Jaco Piper. Nigel Owens is right up there with him. The world just loved him, and the way that he the style that he referees the games, and also, his one-liners that he pulls out. But for me, like, Barnesy, he's a leader within our group. He's just been there for so long. Like he refereed that quarterfinal against All Blacks France. I think he was like the age of 31 or something, which is pretty incredible. Like, I went to the World Cup, I think I was 31 or 32 as well. So, for him to actually do a quarterfinal and still be there now, he's just developed so much. And you see that in the way that you talk to him now and the way that he referees. He referees games really well. And I think in terms of like the all encompass package, he's sort of got that. But it's only been through time, and getting denied, re-entry into New Zealand and all that kind of stuff. So he's definitely up there right now. But it's good. Like, I think even in New Zealand though, like we've got a really good group of young referees right now, sort of at that Super Rugby level. And And you do go through a cycle where, you've got a really strong group of French referees that will be strong for like a 3 or 4 year cycle. Before that, it was probably South Africa with Craig Joubert and Andre Watson and all that. And before that, it was probably New Zealand. I think now as New Zealanders, we're almost getting back to, we've got like Brendan Pickerel, Paul Williams, James Dolman, Mike Fraser, who now are all getting tier 1 test match experience, and we're all sort of mid-30s. So hopefully that's strong, means it's strong for New Zealand. It's only going to help, I think, Super Rugby and the New Zealand game, because you've got these top referees with top experience to help referee the game, and then hopefully that will benefit those players who then go on and play international and play for the All Blacks and further on in the future.
Okay, next question. Does he get much grief from New Zealand public when he's out and about?
Nah, not really. Like, I think it probably only really started, because I've been refereeing tier 1 test matches for maybe 4 or 5 years. Went to the World Cup, like even was part of the World Cup final, but because I never referee the All Blacks, and the All Blacks didn't make it through. People don't really notice that, okay, there's actually a New Zealand referee, or there are New Zealand referees out there refereeing at the highest levels as well, in Six Nations and I guess in the November test matches either. So I quite like that. It means I can come back to New Zealand and no one notices me at all. I'm not like a player. I can go and have a beer, and no one's taking a photo of me. It's fantastic. But then when I did referee the All Blacks last year in Sydney, that's when I did notice that actually people are like, oh my gosh, wow, you referee at that level, that's amazing. And I'm like, yeah, like it is pretty cool. But I guess you do become a bit more, and I think now, because I have been involved in bigger games, you referee some of the big games in Super Rugby, and especially because we've done every single game in New Zealand, like normally would be in South Africa and Argentina, away from those headlines.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you are, I'll be an O Keeffe if, how can this team win with him, and how can, is he favouring one team again, and like where's he from in New Zealand and all that kind of stuff. So you do sort of get noticed a bit more just because we've been more local. But that's just part of it, and I certainly liked it when I could be doing those games and not being recognised or noticed at all, because that's kind of what I want to be like on the field as well. You're not really noticed or recognised either. You can sort of just do the job and get out.
Yeah, and you mentioned people mentioning about refereeing their side, so we got heaps of questions about that. About why does he hate the Hurricanes or whatever? But, do you go into a game ever? Go into the game nervous about refereeing one side because you feel like you have a bias towards them, e.g. the All Blacks Australia game?
No, like absolutely not. Like the way that I referee, you referee based on instinct and what happens in front of you. So a player makes a tackle and doesn't roll away, bang, you got advantage. Yeah. You don't have time to actually go, oh, that's my mate from high school, or oh, that's that's an All Black there, so I'll bring my hand back in. Like it would just be too obvious. But you do, because you're refereeing on instinct, because you've trained yourself just like players. If you're reading a gap and passing, you do that based on instinct as well. So for me, and like in New Zealand especially, I grew up in Tasman. I studied in Dunedin. I lived in Wellington, and now I live in Auckland. So there's there's no bias there. It's just like I don't as a referee, you don't really support a team, and I like how that was sort of proven when you started getting people referee their own country. So last year, especially, we had Australians referee Australia, New Zealand, and I refereed the New Zealand versus Australia as well. And I think we're all a little bit apprehensive to see, okay, how is this actually going to work? But I was really confident knowing that, well, this is how we referee a game. We just go out there and we referee what's in front of us. Doesn't matter what colour jersey they have on. And that really happened when I refereed the All Blacks. I just refereed and it didn't really matter. I think I yellow carded 2 All Blacks in that game. It doesn't matter. They were from New Zealand. They were going to be yellow cards whether you're wearing a gold jersey, a Welsh jersey, an English jersey, or an All Black jersey. So, but I understand how people will always say that. But at the end of the day, the longer I've been refereeing for a long time now, those people's teams, they would have lost at least once when I've been refereeing with them, and they probably blame me for that. So I think just the longer you referee, the more you're going to be perceived to be like that. So unfortunately, I don't think it's going to change.
Like that. Okay, next one. Have you ever considered going back to being a rugby player?
Oh, mate, I've played social rugby before, but
Mm.
only because, I still get given free boots. If I had to buy my own boots, I think, no, I wouldn't. But no, like I've never considered, because, I've reached a level where I would never have reached this playing, being involved
Yeah.
in tier one test matches. And, that's right down to, I would never have, played in Bunnings or Heartland, So for me, I'm really grateful, and I love, what I do as a referee. And because I'm always, like I think I said at the start, like I always want to keep challenging myself and keep challenging myself to be better for the game. If I went back to play rugby, I mean, I wouldn't be challenging myself at all. I'd just be like, I'd be a challenge for the referee. I tell you that. Like I'd definitely be one of those players that would be telling me to be quiet. I remember I'll play social netball, and I feel sorry for them. I do sort of everything that is yelled at me from the weekend or sent to me on social media. I bottle up, and I think I let loose on these social netball umpires. So I got to rein that in. But no, I haven't considered going back. I think I'd break in half the first tackle that someone did.
That's classic. Okay. On that, who is the hardest player to referee?
Who's the hardest? Like that is a hard question, because everyone at a professional level, everyone knows the laws really well. Everyone's really competitive, so everyone, they do challenge you, but they do challenge you respectfully. So I think, I guess the hardest players to referee are, a lot of the captains around the world. You get the Alwyn Joneses, the Sia Khaleesi's, even Sam Whitelock. Because they know the law really well, and their job is, and I do like an open communication channel. They can be quite difficult to deal with, because they're coming at you with questions, they're challenging your decisions, even though it's respectful. But it's always putting you on notice, and you're just trying to have to manage that situation constantly. So they're sort of really challenging players in terms of how you manage with them. And then other players are just like a lot of sevens in the world, like the Tom Currys, the Dalton Papali'is, the Adi Savias. They're so quick to get on the ball. They're so low when they get on the ball that sometimes you question yourself. You're like, wow, because they're so quick now, you really have to be on the money, and you have to be at their rack quickly to actually read, okay, should they be rewarded with that penalty, or actually should they be penalised for being off their feet or for not rolling away? So, I think just the accuracy and the skills of players are really challenging, compared to what it was like maybe 5-10 years ago.
Interesting, eh? Okay, next one. If you could change one rule, what rule would you change?
Look, what I would change is stop changing the laws every year. I think that happens a lot, where we just get really good at a set of laws and interpretations, and then because it takes some time, it's like players, you're sort of adapting to a new style, and then all of a sudden it's changed, and then we have to refresh everything again. But so if we weren't going to do that, if we did have to change anything, I would actually try and change the outlaw,
Oh, yeah.
which is a really technical piece, and like you'd know as sort of a fullback winger, where if depending on the plane of touch, the ball's either in or it's out. You can be actually running outside the field of play, and if the ball hasn't crossed the plane of touch, you can hit it in, but not catch it. If you hit it in, then it's play on. You can score a try actually lying outside of the field of play, and then hit the ball down and in goal. So there's all those things where, as an assistant referee, like, when you prepare for a game, like that's the stuff that you get pretty scared about, because you're thinking it happens so quickly, and like, where's the plane of touch? Where is it? Is he out? Is he not? Is the foot on the ground? Is it not? I just think, look, if the player's out, they can't touch the ball, and the ball's out. So
100%.
I would like, mate, I would like them to change that law, because then all of a sudden, your mates are the Hurricanes. I think Corey Jane did the whole, if you can jump from outside the field of play, and as long as you catch the ball and land in, it's play on. So that's another real niggly one where in law it's right. I think they could definitely do it. I think in basketball, it's real simple. It's basically if the ball's out, or if it touches someone that's out, then it's out. So, and that's a great sport. So I think we should definitely take a leaf out of maybe their book.
Yeah. Okay. One more rule change, and then we'll knock it on the head.
Yeah, I'd be happy with that.
Okay, this one you might have been playing actually. Thoughts on the Nasi Manu v Ryan Marshall hit that still circulates on the socials?
Mate, that is like folklore at Marlborough Boys College. Rugby, that one. It's amazing. I don't know if you've seen the clip, but you should definitely try and get it.
You must have been on the other wing, were you?
Oh, mate, I'm so happy. I was on the other wing. I was 50 meters from that. Nasi Manu came out of nowhere. I think Ryan Marshall's still getting tackled right now. But that was I would say a bit of a golden era for Marlborough boys. We were really led well by guys like Joe Wheeler and Quinton McDonald, and I
Yeah.
think it was like the Press Cup final against Christchurch boys, and they were unbeaten all season until we beat them in the round robin, and then we played them at home at the mighty Lansdowne Park. And yeah, so Nasi Mane was I think the number 8 for Christchurch boys, and mate, he just came out of nowhere, and I can't say that I've ever wanted to be on the end of that because I've seen that video clip, and the video clip still sort of resurfaces. And mate, I feel for the guy, but he got up and he kept playing. So
Yeah.
no, it was a good tackle.
And that was your last game of rugby too, wasn't it? You retired out of sympathy.
Oh mate, it probably was. I was like, look, I was very close to putting on the 11 jersey that day, but like I've got a good right boot, so I better put on the 14, and then. It just showed me like you made the right decision then, and we'll leave it there.
What's the refereeing decision from that hit? Play on or?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Like it's almost you give a yellow card to the guy that got tackled just to give him 10 minutes, just to catch his breath again. But it was a good low hit, full wrap from distance. He just smoked him. So no, I love that clip. It's definitely one for the ages from Marlborough boys.
Yeah, one of the greats. Okay, next one. Have high tackle rules gone too far?
Well, yeah, I think they had maybe 2 years ago or a year ago where pretty much every bit of head contact was a red card.
Yeah.
And now I'm not exactly the best person to talk about that with the red card decision I gave a few weeks ago. But I think the benefit now is that the guidelines it's actually called a head contact process now. So
Yeah.
we've actually been given a bit of latitude now to actually, okay, yes, there might be direct head contact. So there might be direct head contact in the game of rugby, and there's a lot of direct head contact in the game of rugby, close to the goal line, pick and go. Even like when you are trying to make a tackle, if a player changes their position in the last few seconds, it's very, very dynamic. It used to be that red cards were for intentional acts of foul play where this player must leave the field because we can't have that in a game of rugby, and then it blended into this foray of legal what were legal tackles. Initially trying to make a legal tackle, but it gets it slightly wrong by a few centimeters. All of a sudden, that's a red card as well. So the difference between a red card and a play on became like 1 centimeter. And that's where we were getting a lot of red cards. There was a lot of red cards in the Six Nations. There was a lot of red cards in the Rugby Championship last year as well. And I think we were getting to a point where like our hands were tied as referees. As soon as we saw direct head contact slow down on the TMO screen on the big screen, we're almost having to try and find a way to not give a red card. But if we didn't do that, our bosses were going to kill us in the review, and then we wouldn't get another game. So we're in a real tough position. But now, I guess it's sort of evolved where there's more emphasis on the actual actions of that defender. How much danger, like are they initiating the contact? Are they providing a lot of the high danger because of the way that they're actually attacking the player? They're either jumping into it, they've come from distance, it's a swinging arm, it's a shoulder charge, or are they stationary and are they just trying to soak the tackle? And actually the dip from the ball carrier is the mitigation around, okay, why this might not be a red card and why it might actually even be play on, So I like where we're moving. I think there's definitely further developments that we need to make so that the game does need to remain safe. The players are getting bigger, faster, stronger, so those hits do have an impact, especially with everything that's going on with concussion. But we do, to answer that question, we do need to be a bit smarter just around, the impact that those red cards are giving. Yeah. So making sure that we're getting those right decisions for the game.
Great answer. Okay, next question. Do you think you should be punished for faking a head high? I'm guessing it's a little bit like what the French 8 did when he got hit by Kuraberi.
Totally. Yeah, I think, and we haven't really seen that in a game of rugby. A lot of it happens in football, and I think that sort of acting or that faking or is something that we cannot allow to ever come into the game. So I think that was really, I guess, a cornerstone incident. Okay, so we worked out, that it shouldn't have been a red card.
Yeah.
We also worked out in the review when we talked to our reviewers and with all the World Rugby referees is that if we get a situation like that again, when a player does, they're trying to get a penalty out of you, or they're trying to fake an injury or fake where they've been hit. Well, we need to go hard on that player, either by at least reversing the penalty, or even yellow carding, or at worst extent red carding that player as well. Because as soon as we start getting players doing that, it's going to be a really bad look for the game. So. I don't think. I think if we saw that in the future, and certainly part of my game now, the way that I'll go back and I review my philosophies and how I referee a game, part of my blueprints, I've added in that, okay, if I get a player that acts like that, if I have to yellow card the tackle, fine, but I'm going to make sure that I sanction that player as well. So I think potentially in that situation, if I had that again, that exact same moment, and you never get the same type of high tackle again, so it's always going to be slightly different. But I think I would have yellow carded Koroibete, because he still gets him high, even though the contact shoulder first, then to the head. So yellow card, but I would have yellow carded the French captain as well, and maybe even restarted with the penalty to Australia. Because there's got to be a real firm stance around that in a game, and that's what we do as referees. We see instances that have happened in the game, and it might be as simple as a tackle decision or something more complicated like that high tackle. We review it, and then we add that into our game for next week, so that if it happens in the future, just like I said, then you can pull the trigger on what is the better outcome to do. And that's why guys like Wayne Barnes, because they've been through all that before. Like he's made all those mistakes before. That's why he makes when he referees a game, or when Jaco Piper referees a game, everyone goes, wow, he managed that really well. Or yes, that was the great yellow card, because he's been in that decision before, and he's actually being able to do it again because he's reviewed it.
Mate, that's good stuff. I'm looking forward to seeing the first yellow card for a Hollywood.
Yeah.
That's going to be coming soon, and it's going to change the game. I love it.
Yeah, it'll be good. And I'm going to say Hollywood, actually, mate. You can't Hollywood. See ya.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay. This is an interesting one. Is it true that Ben and Angus Gardner hired a convertible in South Africa and ended up at a pub where there was a shooting?
Oh yeah, you sort of asked earlier on in the podcast around what you do during that week, and I think it was on a Wednesday we sort of decided to have a day off, and we hired a car and just drove down to the Cape of Good Hope, just to a bit of sightseeing, just to get out, a bit of fresh air, and then dropped the car off, and then we walked out and to get some dinner somewhere, and then literally we left probably 10 o'clock, went back to the hotel. And then the headlines the next morning was, literally at 10 past 10, a guy walked in there and there was a shooting. So
Jeez.
You sort of realise that, we get this amazing opportunity to travel. And sometimes you sort of realise, you think you're in this amazing bubble where nothing can go wrong. But you just got to, keep in mind that, you are in a different country. Things do happen that are out of your control, and it's really important to obviously look after yourself and look after whoever you're traveling with, because things can change pretty quickly. So that doesn't mean I don't think you should be ever you shouldn't be stuck in your hotel room the whole time, because I think I'll just go crazy with that. But things can happen everywhere in the world. So certainly when you are traveling, I know teams have been through that as well. When they travel overseas, it's really you just got to be so careful with what you're doing now. So, that was definitely one situation that opened my eyes.
Jeez, that's crazy. So you guys don't have a security guard, because I know all the Super Rugby teams, when they go to South Africa, they've got their own personal security guard. But you guys, you're on your own tour, are you?
Yeah, and that's I didn't realise that teams had security guards either. So, we'd go to South Africa, 3 or 4 times, but, not just, South Africa all over the place. But, it would just be sometimes I'd be there by myself, and I'd be doing my own things. And, you obviously, you try and stay as safe as you can, certain places that you don't go to. But, other times you'd be traveling with maybe 2 or 3. So it would just be the 3 of you. And, you do try and stick together the whole time. But, you walk into the supermarket, you walk into the training field, you walk into the gym. It's you just got to be so careful when you're traveling.
Mate, that's crazy. Yeah, South Africa, dangerous place. But who is the best player you have red carded?
The best player I've red carded.
Yeah.
I don't really try and fondly think of my red cards too much. But
got a Big posters on the wall of the guys you red card.
Yeah, it's normally like in my Christmas cards I write to them like, I'm so sorry, like it's been 5 years since I red carded you, but just want you to know that. But like it is a thing, I obviously I never liked giving red cards because I think they impact the game so much, and now they're so technical, these red cards that we give.
Yeah.
I think one of the first ones I ever gave was I think Jason Emery down in Dunedin. I think it was in my first year where he went up and I think he took Billy LaRue out in the air and Billy LaRue landed on his head. I think it was Highlanders versus Sharks. And then I've given other ones out as well where you do sort of, because I've only given maybe 4 or 5 in my career. So you don't try and obviously make it rack them up, but you do remember all of them. And I think certainly the ones that I do remember, like there was one where I gave in Sydney a few years ago. It was the Sunwolves versus the Reds, so it was in Brisbane. And it was one of those ones that was another learning one where, we got a bit of a punch at the bottom of a ruck and, I sort of said, well, punches at the bottom of the ruck to the head, it's a red card. And it was really light. It was like a sort of touch of the year really. But because we slowed it down, because we used the TMO, that player was red carded. And mate, you feel really bad as a referee when you make decisions like that you don't truly believe in when you review the game and when potentially it's impacted the game. And I remember I saw that player a whole year after, and I went up to him and I was like, mate, look, I don't know if you remember, but obviously I red carded you last year, and I just want to say sorry, And that for me was a bit of a weight that lifted off my shoulder because I felt so bad, and I think as referees, people, I don't know if people realize this or not, but we do feel really connected to the game. And obviously we don't want to be part of the spotlight, but naturally we're brought into it when we have to make these big decisions, when we have to be in front of the screen for a TMO decision, when we have to make game defining decisions. You do beat yourself up quite a bit in your reviews. So that was something I was carrying around for a long time, and it was just nice. And he was really good about it. He said, mate, look, no worries. We all make mistakes, and we moved on. So it was a really good part of it. So in terms of answering that question around red cards, like I can remember all of them. But yeah, they're never nice to give, and soon I'm sure they're not for a player. Have you ever been red carded?
Nah, never. Only 2 yellows in Japan, one for throwing the ball at someone.
Oh, good.
I couldn't believe it. It was my first yellow in professional rugby, throwing the ball at someone because he wouldn't let me throw a quick throw in. But
yeah, did you hit him?
Yeah, one of those. Oh, yeah, but not very well. If I knew I was going to get yellow, I would have kicked it at him.
Nice.
Okay, 2 more. Okay, what's one odd law that we wouldn't have heard of?
I think that one that I mentioned before, that law where if the ball is sitting in goal, okay, so if it's in, if I'm attacking and the ball's sitting in the in goal that I want to score a try in, I can actually be lying outside. So I could be outside the in goal. And if I'm lying on the ground and the ball's on the ground in the in goal, I can actually put my hand out and score a try. So I could be there with my hand on the ball scoring a try, and my whole body could be out. And I'd be walking over as a referee being like, look, I know no one's going to like this, but bang, that's a try. Cue the headlines, but that's under law 11.4, whatever. So that's a real unusual one. That now the problem is because it hasn't really happened, I think ever. That's why it hasn't been changed.
It's so hard to because the ball has to be on the ground, right?
Yeah.
Like it can't. Most times the ball's in then goal, it's sort of popping up, and they'll have to slightly put the ball down. But on that rule, am I right in saying that the ball has to be flat on the ground to do that?
It does, because if the ball's off the ground, so it's bouncing like from a grub or whatever, then as soon as it's off the ground, if you touch it, then you're in possession. So then if you're out, then you're out. But if the ball's on the ground, because you touch it on the ground first and it's not in the air, then for some reason it's a try. So
it is a crazy rule. Hopefully it happens soon. Hey, the same game the Hollywood yellow card happens. It's going to all come to fore.
Well, yeah, you may as well just have it all in one game, eh? Just chuck it all in one game, and then we can have a big review afterwards. I just hope that I'm in the stands watching the game. I definitely don't want to be the referee for that.
Fair enough. Okay, last question. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
I remember it was actually after one of those incidents that I talked about. I remember talking to one of the coaches. I think it was Tony Brown, and he said to me, he was like, "Look, referees, okay, you do a lot of work in terms of learning the technical side of the game, understanding the laws, going out there and refereeing. But what players want to do and what coaches want to see is actually a referee that's just enjoying the game. So obviously being accurate, but just enjoying the game as well. Because if a referee's enjoying the game, then that rubs off on the players, and then the players, I guess, naturally enjoy it a bit more as well. They accept your decision a bit more as well. So he just made a comment. He said, "Look, mate, like go out there and just enjoy it. Just enjoy the game. Trust your ability, and then everything you obviously work out afterwards." So I really took that bit of advice, and that was sort of only a few years ago where I'd done a lot of refereeing and studied up a lot and done a lot of games, and that really opened my eyes to just be like, well, yep, okay, I've just got to trust my ability as a referee, and then the only next thing you do is just enjoy the 80 minutes. And I think when you do that naturally, you have a better game because mentally you're more relaxed, and I think it definitely helps the flow of a game. So that's one thing. Like among many different things, like that people throughout my career that I can be very grateful for. I also think like some of the best advice I ever got was at club rugby in Dunedin. At the aftermatch, you'd always go in, you'd have a beer, you'd have some hot chips, and then the winning coach would come over and shake your hand, and then the losing coach would come over, chuck their beer down, and you knew you're in for a 20-minute and a bit of enlightenment. But they were really good those times, and actually that's that's a big part of what I miss in terms of the international stuff now, is that apart from Six Nations, you have a big formal aftermatch, but in terms of Super Rugby and other Test matches now, especially with COVID. Everyone, you blow the final whistle, you walk off, and then everyone's off again to the next game. So it's pretty, I guess professional and serious in that sense. So you certainly miss that the good times that I would say.
Mate, that is some excellent advice from you, and it's awesome to get an insight from one of the best referees in the world. So really appreciate you coming on the podcast and going through your journey. What an incredible journey that's been. And mate, like I said, I got so much admiration for referees because it's such a hard job. It's so much more than people could ever imagine, I guess, and the amount of criticism that they cop for getting decisions wrong and almost a possible game to referee perfect. Mate, it must be just such a hard gig, but it's awesome to hear how cool it is from your side and the whole process of the journey. So really appreciate you coming on the podcast, giving up your time, and thanks for coming on, mate.
Yeah, cheers, Jimmy. It's awesome to be on What a Lad, and thanks for having me. Obviously, look, I'm in lockdown, so I've got nothing else to do. So, but it was awesome, mate, to catch up with you again. And thanks very much for having me on.
No worries, mate. I'm in lockdown too, so we're all on.
We all are, yeah.
What a lad, what a lad, what a lad.